Survivor Series was one hell of a show. It's going to be one of those shows that's going to be talked about for years to come as potentially one of the most monumental WWE premium live events of all time. So today we're going to be tier ranking that very show, Survivor Series War Games. We're going to be tier ranking the matches, the audience, the crazy returns, and any meaningful backstage segments as well. Now, if you're looking for a more proper review that was done immediately after the show was done, you can go check out my full Survivor Series War Games review that was uploaded last night. I give a pretty emotional speech about CM Punk's return because to me, this is just such a crazy, monumental moment in wrestling history. So like I said, we're going to take all these moments and we're going to tier rank them from Hall of Fame all the way down to trash. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, ring that bell for notifications if you're a wrestling fan. I know that you're going to fall in love with this channel because we upload daily wrestling content. Look, if you need any more proof that this is daily content, I'm on the other side of the world right now on vacation making this video. And for Survivor Series, I rented out a second hotel room so that I could watch it and stream it without having to be quiet because my girlfriend was sleeping. And I don't have my regular setup, which is why my lighting isn't that great. Also, just before anyone starts wondering, I'm not a little goblin that's 3'2". I'm sitting on the ground, okay? Because I know a lot of these memes are going to come out that I'm a little I'm a little gold goblin that's a tiny little human being. No, I'm a tall dude. All right, let's jump into it. All right, so we're going to be starting off with the match that kicked off everything, and that was the Women's War Games match. Now, the Women's War Games match was between Bianca Belair, Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, and Shotzi taking on Team Damage Control, Bayley, Asuka, Kairi Sane, and Io Sky. And right off the cuff, it feels like the WWE was not treating this anywhere near as, I guess, as a level of importance as the Men's War Games match, simply by the fact that it had less women on it. But honestly, walking away from things, I'm kind of thinking that 4v4 is the sweet spot for a Survivor Series War Games match because it means that the match doesn't take 45 minutes to actually get started and it doesn't end up going for an hour. But that's really just an opinion piece. If you think otherwise, then, you know, by all means, we can continue with the 5v5. But I think that the 4v4 pace really added to this because this was such a fast-paced, hard-hitting match. There were so many stiff chair shots, so many cool spots. Of course, the biggest highlight being Io Sky jumping from the top of the cage with the trash can on top of her. It was such a fantastic, fun moment in that match. On top of that, I have to add that every single one of these ladies looked great. At some point or another, they were a standout candidate. Even Shotzi, who I had been criticizing for a long time as somebody that just didn't feel right, somebody that just didn't need to be in this match, but I really believe that she earned her keep. I think that she looked great in this. And not only were the women performing, but the people that were watching, the Chicago crowd, was reacting for this match basically from beginning to end. No one seemed bored in that arena because of this match. I know we haven't gotten to the Men's War Games match, but in my opinion, I think that this was a better War Games match head-to-head versus the men's match. And I'll continue to reiterate, I think part of the reason why, it's because it was a 4v4 instead of waiting for so long for all 5 members of both teams to come into the ring. In terms of the booking decision, like, I didn't love it. I've been very vocal about the fact that I really felt like Damage Control needed to win that. I really felt that it was a must win in order to help cement Damage Control as the top women's faction in WWE history. It seems, however, that the plan isn't to cement Damage Control as a top women's faction of all time, but instead to kick out Bayley at some point or another and create a stronger version of the faction without her. At the very least, when I'm reading the tea leaves, that's what I'm seeing. So who am I to tell Triple H at this point how to do things? The man loves his long-term storytelling, so I'm going to let him continue to run with things. But at the moment, I was not pleased with the booking decision. But ultimately, the booking decision did not impact how I felt about this match. I still felt like it was a great War Games match. So I'm going to be putting the Women's War Games match into the great category. And then, folks, afterwards, we had the biggest return in WWE history. A monumental return that will shake the foundation of professional wrestling as a whole. We had the return of the legendary R-Truth. Now, I will say that segment, the way that they brought back R-Truth was the most R-Truth thing ever. The fact that he was brought back in a sponsored segment with comedy factions like Pretty Deadly, like Tozawa and the Alpha Academy was brilliant. The way that he was reintroduced, it literally felt like he never left. And they made a joke about that where he said, I was always here. Great segment. That was one of the better sponsored segments that I've seen from the WWE in a while. I love the debate between crisps or chips, ultimately it being Ruffles when R-Truth showed up. I love this. I'm so happy to see R-Truth back, and I can't wait to see him in more backstage segments with the likes of Alpha Academy. I think it's going to make for some comedy gold on Monday Night Raw moving forward. So R-Truth returning goes into the great category as well. Now, as we return back to the matches, let's turn our eyes to Gunther versus The Miz for the Intercontinental Championship. I said this in my review, but I felt like this was The Miz's best match in ring in a very long time. Dare I say, perhaps anywhere from around 7 to 8 years. Now, this is par for the course for Gunther. This was a pretty regular Gunther match, but an excellent Miz match. Miz looked great. He had really innovative offense in here, but more than anything, I love the fact that he kept his heel moveset throughout this entire match, removing the turnbuckles, hitting a nasty looking low blow on Gunther at one point, right into a skull crushing finale. I just love the fact that this is a babyface that at heart is still a bad guy. That's how it's done. That's exactly what I wanted to see from The Miz. And shout out to The Miz for helping bring more character out of Gunther as well. I felt like maybe it wasn't Gunther's best in-ring match, but I think this was Gunther's best character feud that we've seen from him probably ever in the WWE. So both of these guys walk away from this match and walk away from this feud looking better than they did going in. The match was very good. I just don't think that it's up to the standard of the Gunther matches that I'm expecting, but a great Miz match. So I'll meet you in the middle and we will put this into the good category. Next, we move on to Dragon Lee versus Santos Escobar, a match that was originally supposed to be Santos Escobar versus Carlito. This was objectively a good wrestling match, but when it comes to PLEs, we aren't just expecting good in-ring work, we are expecting a reason to care behind the characters, a reason to want to root for the hero here, and there really wasn't one because there isn't too much of a feud, too much of a history, too much of a program right now on the main roster between Dragon Lee and Santos Escobar. So this kind of just felt like another one of those really good Dragon Lee matches on SmackDown. But when we're talking about Survivor Series, when we're talking about a major PLE in front of this giant crowd, I think the expectation is that this is more than just a good wrestling match. Still, it was a good wrestling match, but there was really nothing to get behind is really what I'm trying to get at here. So I'm not going to say that this is a bad match because it's not. It is a good match, but for a PLE, there needs to be more stakes. There needs to be more emotion, and that is not something that we had. So I'm going to be putting this into the meh category. Very curious why they removed Carlito from this match, because I think Carlito could have given this match exactly what it was missing, which was more character. Let's move on to the women's world title match between Rhea Ripley and Zoey Stark. Now, I had said that I really believed that Zoey Stark needed to come out of this looking great, because if she didn't put on a great performance, I felt like she was going to be immediately placed back into the women's tag team division, and we were never going to hear from her ever again in the main event scene. So I felt like this was a show up or get out of here for Zoey Stark, and I do believe that she showed up. Look, here's the thing. To me, this was never for the title, at least in my mind, because I never felt like the title was ever in danger. And that's not a problem with Zoey Stark. That's a problem because of WWE's booking and ensuring that all we care about is the future, which is Rhea Ripley versus Becky Lynch, because we know that's their end game. We know that's where they're going to go. So when I see Zoey Stark or Raquel Rodriguez or Natalia going up against Rhea Ripley, I immediately know that they're going to lose. So it felt like this match didn't have any stakes. So for me, this was about Zoey Stark looking great and looking like a plausible main eventer moving forward. And I think that she did that. I think that she looked great here. I thought that not only did she look like a badass in the ring, she had some really cool moments, but I think for me, something that clicked with her was this in-ring trash talking, the in-ring psychology, the way she was talking smack to Rhea Ripley in the middle of the ring. That is what I want to see more of Zoey Stark, so that she can separate herself from somebody like a Shayna Baszler, so that she can separate portrayed herself as not just a badass on the women's roster, but a badass character as well. And I think that this was the coming out party for that. Still, the fact that I just didn't feel like Rhea's title was ever in jeopardy meant that the adrenaline wasn't really there for this match. So I'm going to put this alongside Santos and Dragon Lee, kind of for the same reasons. I just didn't feel like there was enough at play. I didn't feel like the stakes were there, and because that was the case, I didn't really get fully behind the story of the match. Now, this next segment, we're going to be hitting two things. We're going to be hitting Randy Orton's return, and we're also going to be hitting the men's War Games match. Pound for pound, I think that the men's War Games match was very good. I just don't think that it was as good as the women's. And like I said, I think the reason for that is because there's a lot of dead air, a lot of time where we're just sort of waiting for the next person to come in. And when you add one more person to each team and make this a 5v5 instead of a 4v4, we're sitting there for even longer. And it's not that I'm some sort of impatient ADHD wrestling fan. It's just that it impacts the flow of things. It impacts when we think that big payoffs are going to happen. And because those payoffs get pushed further, the people in the ring need to find ways to extend the match. And usually that's rest hold. Sometimes that's just laying there resting. But ultimately, I still think this was a fantastic War Games match. I'm just saying the women's was better, and I think it's because of the formula of things. If I have to give an MVP of in-ring work in here, I have to give this to JD McDonough. JD McDonough did some crazy things in this match, even though he felt the most out of place. So I feel like maybe he had this chip on his shoulder that he really felt like he needed to show out, kind of like what I was saying about Zoey Stark. And he absolutely did. He did some crazy things. Definitely the highlight was that beautiful moonsault that he had during this awesome sequence where Judgment Day were all hitting finishers, the moonsault, the frog splash, the stomp. That was fantastic. Judgment Day looked very strong here. I will say the one person that I felt like they kind of disappeared and didn't impact the match a whole lot was Drew McIntyre. I was expecting a heck of a lot more from him. Yes, when he came in, he helped shift things towards Judgment Day, but after like the first 3-4 minutes of him going into the match, I kind of forgot that he was there. There was some great emotion in this match as well, as you could tell that there was just so much hatred and so much heat, like right from the get-go. The way that Seth Rollins catapulted at Finn Balor just to even start the match really set the pace that these guys have been going at each other's throats for the better part of about 5 months now. And I truly felt that. I truly felt like there was actual emotion between everyone involved in here. Dude, the way Drew McIntyre kept looking at Jey Uso through the emotion in this match, that to me is what did it. This was so good. And ultimately, I'm not surprised, because when you look at the names that are in here, Sami Zayn, Seth Rollins, you got Cody Rhodes, eventually Randy Orton, Jey Uso, all of Judgment Day, as well as Drew McIntyre. These are all guys that are at the top of their game right now. These are all guys that just aren't in-ring specialists. They're also great character workers. And it shows why they're all in the top of the card right now. It shows why they're all main eventers, that they aren't just great in-ring talent. They're so much more than that. So here's the thing. Even though I like the women's War Games match more, I still think that the men's War Games match belongs into the great category. I think it was really good. I like the women's match more. And I mentioned that we were going to talk about Randy Orton. They did this whole storyline basically from the start of the show that Randy Orton wasn't going to show up. And it was kind of brilliant, honestly, because it did two things. It set up the crowd to start chanting CM Punk, which ultimately was paid off at the very end. And two, like, dude, imagine Randy Orton coming back, his music finally hitting, you getting excited, and then he sits in a cage for 30 minutes. No, that's not how you do it. So I think they did a great job at creating this narrative throughout the entire show that Randy wasn't showing up, and then actually having him show up late and not being stuck in the cage. I think that was a really, really good move, because it ultimately meant that his return felt so much more special, because we got to see him actually walk to the ring to his entrance theme, him playing up to the camera, making faces, talking. It was great. Also, Randy looks fantastic. He kind of looked a little bit like bald Randy Orton, not full bald Randy Orton, but I'm just saying, maybe we're getting that '09 Menace back. In the ring, he still is just immaculate. He is a magician in the ring. He is still so good. So because he looks great, because his in-ring work was fantastic, because the WWE was smart with how they delayed his return, I gotta give this a Hall of Fame nod. I really do. I think it was a great return ultimately. It's going to be a return that we're going to be talking about for such a long time, and it's going to be a return that fundamentally changes the landscape of the WWE. It is so good to have Randy Orton back. He is one of those folks that I don't believe we appreciated until we lost him, and now we don't ever want to lose him ever again. And all right, CM Punk. CM Punk returning was like the worst kept secret in the WWE, but you still didn't believe that it was going to happen. You believed that the bridges were not just burned, they were just flat out nuked, and this was never going to happen. But at the end of the day, this is wrestling, and never say never. Now, CM Punk's return in terms of like impacting the show and the results of the match was zero. They did this a la Bray Wyatt style at Extreme Rules, where the main event ended, the camera cut away from everyone in the main event. They were no longer important in this particular moment, and the moment from here on out was CM Punk's and CM Punk's alone. So we don't know who he's going to have a program with. We don't know who his first match is going to be. So there's still a lot of questions about CM Punk returning. This doesn't even confirm that he's going to be on Monday Night Raw either. He could very well go to SmackDown. But look, obviously CM Punk returning, this is huge news. This is one of the biggest returns in WWE history. This is monumental. Let me say that again. Monumental. Look, AEW demonstrated that CM Punk is absolutely a ratings draw. Such a ratings draw that they got their own TV deal for Collision just because of the presence of CM Punk and the promise that that was going to be CM Punk's show. Of course, the WWE is going to want a piece of the action when it comes to CM Punk because he just creates buzz. He creates headlines. He brings eyes into the world of professional wrestling. And I love the fact that everyone was able to put things aside, at the very least CM Punk and WWE top brass, to make this happen, because this is what the fans wanted. The fans were clamoring for it, and they got it. And I think also what made this return so special in the night, of course, in front of a Chicago crowd that we're going to talk about in just a second, but the fact that you didn't know that it was going to happen, but also the fact that WWE played the crowd to the point where they were tricking them subconsciously into chanting CM Punk, like potentially telling everybody CM Punk, Randy Orton might not show up. Of course, that's going to set off CM Punk chants throughout the night. WWE was so smart in terms of how they handled this. Absolutely brilliant throughout the night. Crowd was absolutely explosive, nuclear. CM Punk just looked happy to be out there. He looked rejuvenated in his last couple of days in AEW. His eyes looked sunk in, so he looks very healthy as well. This is just such an important return for professional wrestling. This is going into the Hall of Fame category right alongside Randy Orton. The Chicago crowd, dude, this crowd is insane. This is one of the greatest crowds in professional wrestling history, and I'm glad that this show happened in front of this crowd. I'm glad that Randy returned in front of this crowd. I'm glad that CM Punk returned in front of this crowd. I'm glad that the women's War Games match showed out in front of this crowd. The pop that they gave for R-Truth, this crowd was lit from beginning to end. Dude, even in the pre-show, you could hear them throughout the arena. They were so much fun. And thank you, Chicago. You guys are awesome. And I've sat here and I've roasted some bad crowds before. You are not one of them. You guys are a legendary crowd, but you don't need me to tell you that. You already know that. The Chicago crowd goes into the Hall of Fame category. And ultimately, now I'm going to tier rank this entire show. Where do I want to put this show? Listen, from an in-ring perspective, the matches, I think that this was a great PLE. It really was. But I wouldn't be putting it into the Hall of Fame. But here's the thing. I feel like this could have been a bad PLE from an in-ring perspective, from booking decisions, etc. But the return of Randy Orton and CM Punk alone would put this into the Hall of Fame category for me. Now, couple that with the fact that the show was good, the crowd was fantastic, I really enjoyed the matches. This is a no-brainer. Survivor Series goes into the Hall of Fame for me. What a great show. And thank you for making me eat my words, Survivor Series, because I was petitioning to get you kicked out of the Big Four. And you demonstrated that you still have some juice left in you. My goodness, this old dog can still learn some new tricks. Welcome back, Survivor Series. Welcome back. All right, that's my tier ranking of the show. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I'm done. Get out of here.